The day I found out my mother had made my sister the legal guardian of my baby, I stopped believing that love could ever be unconditional. I still remember the smell of that morning, the faint sweetness of baby lotion mixed with the sharp scent of burnt toast. My son, Noah, was 6 months old then, kicking his little feet against the blanket as I tried to spoon mashed bananas into his mouth. I laughed every time he spat it back out, those tiny lips pushing away the spoon like he already had opinions about everything. Back then, I thought my world was small but complete, just me, Noah, and the little rented apartment 2 blocks from my mother's house. She'd helped me after I gave birth, bringing soups, folding laundry, fussing over everything. I used to think she was my anchor. But anchors, I learned later, can also drag you down. My sister, Caroline, lived in the big house on the hill, the one with the white fence and the hydrangeas mother loved. Caroline was everything I wasn't: graceful, polished, married to a lawyer named Matthew who always smelled like cologne and quiet success. She had 2 kids, Emma and Jack, both blonde, both adored. Mother practically lived there. Every Sunday, she'd show up with casseroles, baskets of fruit, and endless stories about the grandchildren. I never minded at first. Caroline had always been her favorite. I'd grown used to the way she said Caroline's name with that extra softness, like it was a prayer. What I didn't know then was that behind that softness, something darker was already forming. It started small. A tone. A glance. The way she'd sigh when I held Noah the wrong way or when his onesie didn't match. "Sweetheart," she'd say, "you really should let Caroline help you. She has experience." It sounded innocent. Almost caring. But every time she said it, I felt a tiny splinter wedge itself deeper under my skin. When I first got pregnant, Mother wasn't exactly thrilled. "You're not ready, Lily," she'd said, sitting at the kitchen table, her fingers tracing the rim of her teacup. "You barely make enough to cover rent. A baby needs stability." I'd told her I'd manage, that I had savings from my job at the daycare and that love could make up for the rest. She'd only smiled, that weary kind of smile mothers give when they've already decided you'll fail. After Noah was born, she visited every day. She said it was to help me rest, but it often felt like inspection, her eyes moving from the unwashed dishes to the slightly crooked baby monitor. And always, she'd bring up Caroline. "Caroline never let Emma cry that long," she'd remark casually, or, "Matthew built the crib himself, so sturdy, not like this one." At first, I laughed it off. I told myself that's just how mothers are, always comparing, always pushing. But slowly, her words began to change the way I saw myself. There were nights I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to Noah's soft breathing, wondering if maybe she was right, maybe I wasn't doing this right. Still, despite the constant criticism, I wanted her approval. Every daughter does. So I kept inviting her in, letting her rearrange Noah's drawers, letting her pick the baby food brand, letting her call Caroline every time Noah got a new rash. I told myself it was love. It wasn't. The first real crack appeared one afternoon in early spring. Mother came over holding a manila folder. "I need you to sign some hospital insurance forms for Noah," she said. "Since I helped with the hospital bills, it's just a formality." I didn't think twice. I was exhausted, running on 3 hours of sleep. I signed where she told me to. Later that night, when I told my friend Mia about it, she frowned. "She made you sign papers without explaining?" "Lily, that's weird." I brushed it off, though a small knot had started to form in my stomach. Weeks went by. Life settled into a rhythm again, diaper changes, night feedings, baby giggles that healed me in ways I didn't even understand. Mother still came by, sometimes with Caroline in tow. Caroline would coo at Noah like he was one of her own, whispering, "Auntie loves you, baby," while I made tea in the kitchen. It didn't bother me. Not then. But one afternoon, I came home early from work and found Mother in my apartment, without calling first. She was standing in Noah's room, folding his clothes into a suitcase. "Mom?" I asked, frozen in the doorway. She startled. "Oh. I was just helping you organize. Her tone was too bright. Too controlled. Noah was in his crib, sleeping. And beside the suitcase, there were diapers, formula cans, and Noah's favorite stuffed giraffe, as if someone was packing for a trip. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the image of her hands smoothing over Noah's tiny onesies. Organizing, she'd said. But why did it feel like goodbye? The next morning, she called and said she'd take Noah for the weekend to give you a break. I said no. She went quiet. Then, softly. You're being selfish, Lily. You need rest. Caroline's kids would love to play with him. Something in her voice scared me, that steady, patient tone she used when she'd already decided something, no matter what I said. I didn't let her take him. But from that day on, she looked at me differently. Like I was in her way. The distance between us grew, quietly but steadily. She stopped dropping by as often. When she did, she came with Caroline, and their whispers filled the corners of my apartment. I tried to hold my ground, to believe I was a good mother. But sometimes, I'd see Caroline holding Noah, the way she moved so effortlessly, the way Noah giggled in her arms, and that old insecurity would come flooding back. I didn't know it yet, but by then, the betrayal had already begun. The papers I'd signed, the ones I barely looked at, weren't insurance forms. They were the beginning of something I couldn't have imagined. A plan to take my child away from me. A few weeks passed, and for a while, everything seemed to calm down. Mother still came around sometimes, but now she'd always call first. I thought maybe she'd realized I needed space. I wanted to believe we were finding our balance again, that she'd stopped trying to fix me. Then one afternoon, I got a call from Caroline. Her voice was light, casual. Hey, Lily. Just checking, is Noah still allergic to strawberries? I frowned. What? He's never had strawberries. Oh, I thought Mom said you'd given him some last weekend. She was telling Matthew about how he broke out in a rash. My stomach tightened. I didn't. He hasn't had any. There was a pause. Caroline's voice softened. Oh, maybe she mixed it up. You know how she is, always worrying. I hung up, but something didn't sit right. Mother hadn't seen Noah that weekend. I'd spent it alone with him, just the two of us. Later that night, I called Mother. Mom, did you tell Caroline that Noah had an allergic reaction? Her tone was dismissive. Oh, it was just a little story, Lily. You're overreacting. But why make it up? Because people like to hear updates. Caroline's family asks about the baby all the time. You should be happy they care. That night, I couldn't sleep. Something about the way she said they care, not we care, stayed with me. I began to realize that when Mother talked about Noah, she always said Caroline's nephew or the kid's baby cousin. Never your son. It was subtle, but each time she said it, it chipped away at something inside me. One evening, I stopped by her house unannounced. It was one of those soft, golden evenings where everything glows, the kind that used to make her garden look like something out of a dream. I parked quietly and walked up the path, hearing laughter before I even reached the door. The laughter was Noah's. I froze. I hadn't told her I was coming, and Noah was supposed to be home with me. I stepped into the yard, and there he was. In Caroline's arms. She was spinning him around while Mother watched from the porch, clapping like a proud grandmother at a family photo shoot. My heart jumped to my throat. Mom. I called out. They both turned. Caroline stopped mid-spin, Noah giggling in her arms. Mother's face stiffened, but she smiled quickly. Lily. We were just. What are you doing with my son? Oh, sweetheart, Caroline just wanted to spend a little time with him. You were at work, and I thought. You thought? My voice shook. You took him without asking me? Caroline looked uncomfortable. Lily, it's okay. Mom said you were fine with it. I could barely breathe. She lied. I never said that. The silence that followed was heavy. Even Noah stopped laughing. Mother's eyes hardened, her jaw tight. You're overreacting again. You're exhausted. Caroline's just helping. I reached out and took Noah from Caroline's arms. My voice cracked, but I stood my ground. You don't get to make that decision, Mom. He's my son. Mother's eyes flickered with something, pity? Or contempt? I couldn't tell. Then, quietly, a good mother knows when she needs help, Lily. That sentence sank like a stone. I walked away before she could say more. My hands trembled the whole drive home. Noah slept in his car seat, unaware of the storm rising around him. When I got home, I locked the door, something I'd never done before. For the first time, I was scared of my own mother. The next few days, she didn't call. Neither did Caroline. The silence should have been peaceful, but instead, it felt like waiting for thunder after lightning. Then one morning, a letter arrived in my mailbox. No return address, just my name in my mother's neat handwriting. Inside was a short note. Lily, I've spoken with people who can help you. I know this isn't what you want to hear, but you need guidance. You can't do this alone. I'll take care of Noah until you're ready. There was no signature, just her initials. And tucked behind the note, a photocopy of a legal form. My hands went cold as I read the heading. Temporary guardianship agreement. Mother's name was listed as the witness. And under proposed guardian, it said, Caroline Matthews. I sat there at the kitchen table, the paper shaking between my fingers. I didn't remember signing this version, the date was the same week she'd brought those insurance forms. I felt sick. I called her immediately. Mom, what is this? I demanded. Her tone was calm, too calm. It's just a precaution, Lily. In case something happens to you. It's for Noah's safety. You forged my signature. She sighed. No, you signed it. You just didn't read it. I was shaking. You tricked me. I protected you, she said sharply. Do you think you can raise a child in that apartment, working double shifts? Caroline can give him everything you can't. I went quiet. For a moment, all I could hear was the faint hum of the refrigerator. Then I said, barely above a whisper, he's my son, not yours to give away. Her voice softened, almost pitying. You'll understand one day, when you're older. She hung up before I could say another word. That night, I sat on the floor beside Noah's crib, watching him sleep. His tiny chest rose and fell, his hand curled around his blanket. The thought of someone taking him from me, of him waking up in another house, calling another woman mommy, made my whole body ache. I called a lawyer the next morning. I didn't have much money, but I needed to know what I was up against. The lawyer, an older woman with silver hair and kind eyes, listened quietly as I told her everything. When I finished, she sighed. Lily, this could get complicated. If your mother filed anything with the court, even temporary guardianship, it can't be ignored. We'll have to check. She looked me in the eye. But if you can prove that you were deceived, and that you're fit to parent, we can fight it. For the first time in weeks, I felt a spark of strength. Because maybe, just maybe, I could still take back what was mine. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my mother's calm face as she said, Caroline can give him everything you can't. Her words echoed like a verdict. The next morning, I left Noah with Mia, the only friend I trusted, and went straight to the courthouse. My lawyer, Denise, met me at the entrance with a clipboard and a weary look. She'd been researching all night. Lily, she said gently, I found something. We sat in a small consultation room, the kind that smells faintly of old paper and coffee. Denise laid a few printed documents in front of me. The first page stopped my breath. Petition for legal guardianship, filed by Caroline Matthews. Supported by Margaret Ellis, mother of petitioner and respondent. Under reason for petition, it said. The biological mother, Lily Ellis, is emotionally unstable and currently unfit to provide consistent care for the minor child. My hands went cold. There were attached notes, statements supposedly written by me. One said I'd been struggling with postpartum depression. Another said I'd left Noah unattended. All lies. I looked at Denise, my voice trembling. Where did this come from? It was filed 3 weeks ago. The court hasn't processed it yet, thank God. You were never served notice. My throat burned. She did this behind my back. Denise nodded. And your mother signed an affidavit supporting it. It's her handwriting. I sat there staring at my own mother's signature. The loops of her cursive looked almost graceful, the same hand that once wrote me birthday cards, grocery lists, and I love you notes on my lunch napkins. Now that same hand had signed to take my son away. I drove straight to her house. I didn't call, didn't warn her. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely see straight. The front yard looked the same, the hydrangeas blooming, wind chimes softly tinkling. Caroline's car was parked in the driveway. I didn't even knock. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. They were both in the living room. Mother sitting neatly on the couch, sipping tea, and Caroline standing by the window, holding Noah. My Noah. For a moment, everything went quiet, except for the sound of Noah's soft cooing. Then Mother looked up and smiled, too calmly. Lily. I was just about to call you. Don't, I said. My voice came out sharper than I intended. Put him down, Caroline. Caroline hesitated. Her eyes darted to Mother. Please, I said again. Give me my son. She slowly placed Noah in the playpen beside her. I went to him immediately, holding him close, feeling his warmth against my chest like an anchor in a storm. Then I turned to them. What did you do? Mother sighed, not guilty, not afraid, just tired. I did what was necessary. Necessary? My voice cracked. You lied. You forged papers. You tried to make my sister his mother. I did no such thing, she said, her tone clipped. You signed the papers yourself. I held up the folder Denise had given me. This petition says I'm unfit. You wrote that. You said I was unstable. Caroline stepped forward, nervous. Lily, please. No, Caroline. You went along with this. You filed it. Her eyes filled with tears. I didn't want to. Mom said it was just temporary, that you needed help. Help? I laughed bitterly. By taking my child away? Mother's calm cracked for the first time. Do you think raising a baby is a game, Lily? You can't even afford proper childcare. You barely sleep. You're drowning, and you don't even see it. I stepped in because someone had to. I stared at her, this woman who'd always spoken like she owned the truth. I didn't ask you to step in, I whispered. I needed support, not sabotage. Her lips tightened. You're being emotional. Caroline and Matthew can provide Noah with stability, a home, a future. And what about love, Mom? I said quietly. Do you think stability replaces that? Her voice rose, trembling with fury. Love isn't enough. Look at your life, Lily. You're alone. You can barely manage yourself. You'll ruin that boy if you keep pretending you can do this. The words hit like a slap. For a second, I couldn't speak. My vision blurred with tears. Caroline stepped between us, her voice breaking. Mom, stop. But Mother just shook her head. You'll thank me one day. When Noah grows up happy, safe, in a real home. I cut her off. He is in a real home. With me. We stood there in silence, breathing hard, 3 women tied together by blood, love, and something that didn't feel like either anymore. Then I said quietly, you've crossed a line you can't uncross. I walked out, holding Noah so tightly that he whimpered. Caroline called after me, but I didn't look back. In the car, I cried harder than I ever had in my life. Not just for what she'd done, but for what I'd lost. The illusion that a mother's love was unconditional. The belief that no matter how broken we were, she'd be on my side. That night, I emailed Denise every document I had, the fake forms, the petition copies, even the text messages where Mother questioned my parenting. Denise called me the next morning. "Lily, we can fight this. We'll file an emergency injunction. But you need to stay calm and document everything. Don't confront her again for now." I nodded, even though my hands were shaking. Because now I knew what I was up against. Not just paperwork. Not just deceit. I was fighting the woman who gave me life, to keep the life I'd created. The weeks that followed were a blur of legal meetings, affidavits, and sleepless nights. I learned how to gather evidence, medical records showing Noah's healthy checkups, notes from my employer proving my stability, even neighbors' statements confirming I was attentive and responsible. But while I built my case, Mother kept up appearances. At church, she smiled sweetly, holding Noah's photo in her purse, telling everyone how worried she was about me. People whispered. Some offered sympathy. Others looked at me with quiet judgment. It was a kind of betrayal that cut twice, not just the legal kind, but the social one. My own mother was painting me as a danger to my child. One afternoon, I received a call from the social services office. A caseworker wanted to schedule a home visit, routine, following a family concern. Mother had reported me. Again. That night, I sat by Noah's crib, watching him sleep. The shadows on the wall danced softly, and his tiny hand clutched his blanket. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I'm so sorry you have to be part of this." In that moment, something inside me hardened, not bitterness, but resolve. I wasn't the broken daughter my mother said I was. I was a mother too. And I would fight for my child, even if it meant standing alone. Denise's words kept echoing in my head, "Don't confront her again. Build your case. Stay calm." Calm. How do you stay calm when your own mother is trying to erase you from your child's life? Still, I tried. Because for the first time I understood that emotion was what she wanted, a breakdown she could point to and say, "See? She's unstable." So I learned to move differently. Quietly. Carefully. Every morning, I woke before dawn, fed Noah, and took him to Mia's apartment before work. I started keeping a journal, every visit, every call, every strange thing my mother did. Denise said it would help prove a pattern of interference. At night, when Noah finally fell asleep, I'd sit at the kitchen table with stacks of documents spread around me, the fake forms, her letters, even photos of Noah's room to show he was cared for. Some nights I cried until my throat ached. Other nights, I just stared at the papers and whispered to myself, "She won't win." 2 weeks later, we had our first hearing. It was a temporary injunction, just enough to pause my mother's guardianship attempt while the court reviewed the evidence. I remember sitting in that small courtroom, the walls beige and bare, the air heavy with the scent of old files. Caroline sat across from me, dressed neatly in navy blue, her eyes red from crying. Mother sat beside her, spine straight, lips pressed tight. When the judge called my name, I stood, clutching my lawyer's sleeve like it was the only thing keeping me upright. Denise spoke calmly, laying out the facts, the forged signatures, the lack of any proof of unfitness, the fabricated statements. When it was Mother's turn, she rose and spoke with that same smooth, confident voice she used when talking to neighbors. "Your Honor," she said, "I love my daughter. But she's overwhelmed. She's struggling. We all see it." Caroline and Matthew only wanted to help. The judge looked at her evenly. "Mrs. Ellis, are you aware that filing guardianship papers without the parents' consent can be considered fraudulent?" Mother hesitated for the first time. I was only trying to protect my grandson." Denise handed over the forged documents. "Protecting is one thing. Deception is another." When the judge adjourned, he granted a stay, meaning Noah stayed with me, legally, until a full review could be held. It wasn't a full victory, but it was air after drowning. Outside the courthouse, Caroline approached me. Her eyes were wet, her voice shaky. "Lily, please don't hate me." I didn't understand what she was doing. She said it was just paperwork to help you qualify for childcare benefits. I looked at her for a long moment. Caroline had always been the golden one, the daughter who could do no wrong. And yet, now, she looked small. Lost. "I don't hate you," I said quietly. "But you should have asked me. You should have trusted me enough to know I didn't need saving." She nodded, tears spilling over. "I'm sorry. I really am." Then she said something I didn't expect. "She's different now, Lily. Obsessed. It's like she needs to control everything, even our love for her." Her words lingered. Because deep down, I'd always known that, but hearing it from Caroline made it real. That evening, I went home and finally slept, truly slept, for the first time in months. When I woke up, Noah was giggling in his crib, babbling nonsense at the morning light. His laughter filled the room like sunlight through a crack in a storm cloud. And in that sound, I found something I'd almost lost: peace. For the next few weeks, I focused on rebuilding. I cooked real meals again. Took Noah to the park. Painted over the cracks in the apartment walls. I even put up new curtains, yellow ones, bright and warm, like hope. Mother didn't call. Neither did Caroline. The silence was loud, but it was mine. Then, one Sunday, I saw her again. At church. I'd avoided going for a while, but that morning I felt strong enough to face the whispers. As soon as I walked in with Noah, I felt eyes turn. People knew. They always knew. After the service, Mother approached me near the steps. She looked older, smaller somehow, though her posture was still proud. "Lily," she said softly, "you've embarrassed this family." I laughed quietly, not mocking, just tired. "I think we passed embarrassment the day you tried to steal my child." Her expression didn't change. "I only wanted him to have better." "And you decided you were the one who gets to define better," I said. "You didn't even ask what I wanted. What he needed." Her eyes flickered with something, shame, maybe, or the ghost of it. But it vanished as quickly as it came. "I did what any good mother would do," she said. "No," I whispered. "You did what a controlling mother would do." We stood there, facing each other, two women bound by love and broken by pride. For the first time, I realized something: she wasn't evil. She was afraid. Afraid of losing control, of watching her perfect image of family crumble. That didn't make it right. But it made it human. I turned to leave, but she said my name again, softer this time. "Lily. I miss him." I looked back, tears rising despite myself. "I know. But you'll see him when I decide it's safe, not when you decide I'm unfit." Then I walked away. In the weeks that followed, Denise and I prepared for the final hearing. We gathered testimonials from my coworkers, pediatric records, even texts where my mother admitted to correcting my parenting. When the hearing finally came, the judge dismissed my mother's petition entirely. Her actions, he said, showed serious disregard for the rights of a competent parent. I walked out of that courthouse with Noah in my arms, the weight of months of fear finally lifting. Caroline approached me again afterward, hugging me tightly. "She won't forgive you for this," she whispered. "I don't need her forgiveness," I said softly. "I just need my son." Mother stood across the parking lot, watching us, her face unreadable. For the first time, she didn't call out. She just turned and walked away. That night, I sat in the quiet of my living room, Noah asleep in my arms. The air smelled faintly of baby powder and rain, a soft, forgiving scent. I whispered, more to myself than to him, "We did it." But deep down, I knew the real fight wasn't about custody or papers. It was about something deeper, the right to believe in my own worth, even when the person who raised me didn't. The week after the court hearing, everything changed, not just for me, but for everyone. In small towns, secrets don't stay buried long. And ours had already begun to leak through the cracks. The first whisper came from Mrs. Harper, our neighbor, the kind woman who always left baked goods on the porch. She stopped me one morning as I was strapping Noah into his stroller. "Lily," she said softly, her eyes full of sympathy, "I heard what your mother did. I'm so sorry, dear. No mother should have to fight her own." Her words were kind, but they burned. I wasn't ready for sympathy, it felt like salt on a wound still raw. Still, I thanked her and walked away, pushing Noah through the morning fog, the stroller wheels squeaking against the damp pavement. By the end of the week, half the church knew. By the end of the month, everyone did. At first, I avoided people. I didn't want pity, or worse, curiosity. But soon, the stares and whispers turned into quiet nods of respect. One Sunday, when I walked into the grocery store, the cashier, a girl barely 20, looked up and said, "Good for you, Miss Lily. For standing up for yourself." Her words caught me off guard. I smiled weakly, not knowing what to say. That's when I realized something I hadn't before: people weren't just talking about the scandal. They were talking about the strength it took to face it. Still, not everyone saw it that way. Some of my mother's friends took her side. They said things like, "She only meant well," or, "Lily misunderstood." But others, especially the younger mothers, looked at me differently. Like I'd done something they wished they had the courage to do. Because my story wasn't just mine anymore. It was every woman's story who'd been silenced by someone she loved. Caroline kept her distance for a while. I didn't blame her. The whole ordeal had shaken her, too. But one evening, she showed up at my apartment with a bag of groceries and a tentative smile. "I thought you could use a hand," she said softly. We cooked dinner together, pasta and garlic bread, just like when we were teenagers sneaking food after curfew. For the first time in years, we laughed. Over dinner, she looked at me and said, "I didn't realize how much control she had over us until this happened." She made me believe I was helping, when really, I was just obeying. I nodded. "She trained us to think that love means obedience." Caroline sighed. "And you finally broke that pattern." Her words settled over me like a warm blanket. Maybe that was the real victory, not just the legal one, but the emotional one. The day I stopped being the obedient daughter and became the kind of mother I needed to be. As for my mother, she retreated from the world. She stopped showing up at church. She stopped hosting her little afternoon teas. Even her hydrangeas began to wilt from neglect. I heard she told people she was misunderstood, that her only sin was loving too much. But behind that pride, I think something cracked. One afternoon, Caroline told me Mother had been seen in the park, sitting alone on a bench, just watching children play. "Maybe she misses him," Caroline said. "Maybe," I replied. But I didn't go to her. Not yet. I wasn't ready to face her, not until the wound stopped bleeding every time I thought of her voice saying, "You'll ruin that boy." Then one day, the church pastor called. He asked if I'd be willing to join a small parenting support group for mothers struggling with custody issues. "Your story could help others," he said. At first, I hesitated. I wasn't sure I could share something so personal. But then I thought about the women who'd whispered to me at the grocery store, the ones who said, "Good for you." So I said yes. That first meeting, my hands trembled as I spoke. But as I looked around, at the women nodding through their tears, at the men quietly listening, I felt something I hadn't in a long time: belonging. Maybe my pain wasn't just a wound. Maybe it was a bridge. A few months later, as summer softened into autumn, I took Noah to the park one evening. The air smelled of grass and something faintly sweet, maybe roasted peanuts from a cart nearby. I was watching him toddle across the playground when I saw her. My mother. Sitting on a bench, a wool shawl around her shoulders, her eyes on Noah. For a long time I just stood there. Part of me wanted to leave. Another part wanted to sit beside her, like I used to, before everything broke. Noah noticed her and waved, his tiny hand flapping in the air. Her face lit up, the faintest smile, but it was real. I walked over, slow, careful. "Hi, Mom," I said quietly. She looked up at me, eyes shimmering with something, regret, maybe, or exhaustion. "Lily," she whispered. "He's grown so much." "He has," I said. For a moment, neither of us spoke. We just watched him. His laughter carried through the crisp air, pure and unbroken. "Finally," she said, "I thought I was doing the right thing." I really did. I swallowed hard. "You hurt me, Mom. You made me doubt myself, as a mother, as a person." Tears slid down her cheeks. "I see that now." I nodded. "I'm not ready to forgive you," I said softly. "But I'm not shutting you out, either. Noah deserves to know his grandmother. The real one. Not the one who tried to control everything." She nodded slowly, looking down at her hands. "I'll try," she whispered. "I'll try to be that woman again." For the first time in years, I believed her, or at least, wanted to. We sat there until the sun dipped behind the trees, the sky painted in soft gold and lavender. Noah ran toward us, giggling, and I lifted him into my lap. My mother reached out, brushing her hand gently over his hair. For a moment, time stood still, 3 generations connected, broken but still reaching for love. That night, as I tucked Noah into bed, I realized something. Justice had been served, yes. But healing was just beginning. And maybe, that was enough for now. There's a strange silence that follows pain, not the empty kind, but the peaceful one. The kind that arrives when you've cried everything out and the world seems washed clean. That's how it felt in the months after that afternoon in the park. Noah and I found a new rhythm. Mornings were filled with laughter and oatmeal messes, his little hands reaching for the spoon I'd barely let him hold. Evenings were quieter, bedtime stories, soft music, his tiny body curled against me, breathing deep, safe. Every time I looked at him, I thought about how close I'd come to losing him. Not just legally, but emotionally. If I'd broken under the weight of what my mother did, I could have become the woman she tried to convince the court I was: unfit, unstable, weak. But I didn't. I learned something in that courtroom that no law book teaches, that motherhood isn't measured in paperwork or titles. It's measured in presence. In patience. In love that endures even when it's not returned. Caroline started coming by more often. She'd bring little gifts for Noah, a toy car, a knitted sweater, a cookie shaped like a heart. She wasn't trying to replace what had been lost, she was trying to repair it, piece by piece. One evening, she sat on my couch, watching Noah play, and said, "Do you ever think Mom really believed what she did was right?" I thought about that for a long moment. "I think she believed control was love," I said. "And she couldn't tell the difference." Caroline nodded slowly. "It's sad, isn't it? That someone can love so much they destroy what they're trying to protect." "It's sad," I agreed, "but it's also human." We sat in silence for a while after that. The kind of silence that doesn't need filling. The kind that feels like understanding. It took almost a year before I visited my mother again. By then, her health had begun to fade. The once commanding woman who could silence a room with a single glance now moved slowly, her hands trembling as she poured tea. But her eyes, those sharp, assessing eyes, were softer. We sat in her garden, surrounded by the smell of wet soil and fading hydrangeas. She reached for my hand, her grip weak but warm. "I wanted to make you strong," she said quietly. "I thought if I pushed you hard enough, you'd never fail." A lump rose in my throat. "I didn't need strength, Mom. I needed belief. I needed you to see me." Tears welled in her eyes. "I see you now," she whispered. Something inside me loosened, not forgiveness, not yet. But the start of it. We spent that afternoon talking about simple things, the garden, the weather, Noah's new words. She asked if she could see him again, and I said yes. When I left, I realized that healing wasn't about pretending nothing happened. It was about letting the truth breathe, and still choosing love. There were days when I'd catch glimpses of my mother's old self, in the way I scolded Noah too sharply, or in the tone I used when I wanted things done my way. Each time, I stopped myself, took a breath, and whispered, "You're not her." Because breaking a cycle takes more than anger. It takes awareness and grace. That became my quiet mission, to raise my son in an environment where love meant trust, not control. One evening, months later, I was sitting by the window after putting Noah to bed. The house was still, the only sound was the faint ticking of the clock and the rain tapping against the glass. I opened the small wooden box I kept on the shelf. Inside were the court papers, old letters from my mother, and one photograph. It was of me, my mother, and Caroline, taken years ago, on a summer afternoon when everything seemed simple. I looked at it for a long time. There was love there. Real love, hidden behind pride, mistakes, and silence, but still there. And I realized something I hadn't before. My mother didn't steal my motherhood. She taught me what kind of mother I never wanted to be. And that, in its own painful way, was a gift. Now, every Sunday, Noah and I visit her. Sometimes Caroline joins. We sit in that same garden, talk, laugh a little, and let time do what it does best, soften the edges. My mother still apologizes sometimes, her voice fragile. I always tell her the same thing. We can't change the past, Mom. But we can love better now. She smiles when I say that, a small, tired smile, but full of peace. People still whisper about what happened. But I don't mind anymore. Because for once, the story doesn't end in shame, it ends in growth. I walk with my head high, my son's hand in mine, my sister by my side, and the quiet knowing that love, the real kind, is stronger than pride, stronger than control, stronger than fear. And every night, before I close my eyes, I whisper a small prayer of gratitude. Not for the pain, but for the woman I became through it.